Welcome back to Everyday Race. Today I'm working on my Ford truck. Decided to make a video about brakes. Now there are 6 things that can make your brakes wear out prematurely. What that's going to do is it's going to cost you more money. And nobody wants to spend more money than they have to. So when you're doing your brake job, there are 6 things you should pay attention to. Let's start with the simple one. Brake hose. You can inspect the brake hose on the outside. If your brake hose is rusted out on the metal part, or it has cracks in on the rubber part, that usually means that your brake hose needs to be replaced. It's too old. The brake hoses can also fail internally. So what happens, they fail internally and they will let the brake fluid go in the caliper and they won't let them go back. So what that's going to do is going to make the caliper apply pressure to your brake pads when you're stepping on the brake pedal, but it won't release the brake pads when you let off the brake pedal. That's going to do, it's going to wear out your brake pads a lot sooner. The number 2 thing that can cause premature brake wear is the brake caliper. Every time I do a brake job, changing my brake pads, I double check the brake caliper, to make sure it's in good working shape. Now this is a dual piston caliper. It has 2 pistons. First I do is I look for damage to the seals. That's this rubber part. That's this rubber part around the pistons. It keeps all the brake fluid to coming out. So the next thing is, if you have a brake pad that has excessive wear just on one side, it would be here or here, that usually means that one of your pistons is stuck and the other one is working just fine. So when that happens, when you press on the brake pedal, the caliper only squeezes the upper or just the lower part of the brake pad. So what happens is that half of your brake pads are actually doing any work, and what's going to happen is they're going to wear out on one side, and you're going to have a premature brake wear. So it's going to cost you more money. Not a good thing. In my case, my brake caliper is in good shape. So let's look at number 3. Obviously, if your brake rotor has some grooves or some rust, that can wear out the brake pads sooner. That was the case on this truck. As you can see, the brake pad has a big groove all the way around because the rotor had some damage right in this area. So he wore this brake pad prematurely and needed to be replaced sooner than it needed to be. So number 4, brake caliper bracket. Now I've got one out of the truck, that way you can see better. On this truck, one of the guide pins, which would be this, got stuck in the caliper. It got rusty and it froze to the caliper. So what I had to do is I had to go and get a brake caliper bracket at the salvage yard. The reason for that is the job for these guides to move back and forth, because the caliper only has pistons on one side. So while it's applying pressure to this brake pad, if the guide pins are frozen, then the inside or the piston side brake pad is going to do all the work, while the outside brake pad isn't going to do any work. What that's going to do, it's going to wear out your brake pads prematurely, and you're going to need another brake job. So the guide pins is actually fairly common issue. They do freeze up a lot, and what I do when I pull the brake caliper is I pull the guide pins, I double check that the boot is in good shape, I double check that the hole isn't rusted, and then I use grease and put the guide pin back and forth, make sure there's plenty of grease on the inside. That's going to keep the rust away from the guide pin, and it's going to make the guide pins work correctly to slide back and forth. I've already done this on this caliper bracket. You can see a little bit of grease sticking out. Now I'm not going to have uneven brake wear, and my brake pads will last longer. Alright, next thing that can cause your brake pads to wear out prematurely would be these I call them sliders. They go in the brake caliper bracket, and their job is real simple. Their job is to make sure that the brake pad can slide back and forth. So when you apply the brakes, the caliper clamps the brake pads, and when you let off the brake pedal, the caliper releases the brake pads, and they're supposed to back off just a tiny bit so your rotor can spin. Now they can get damaged by rust and other things. So what I like to do is first I inspect them, make sure they don't have a lot of rust, and the next thing I do is I put grease. Let me show you. I'll put a little bit of grease on them right before I install the brake pads to ensure that they can move freely back and forth. The last thing would be your wheel bearings. Now let me loosen this one up. You could have, if you have a bad wheel bearing or you have loose wheel bearings, your rotor will move back and forth. So what that's going to do is it's going to try to wear out the edges of the brake pad on the outside, on the sides, and that's going to make your brake pads not last as long. So thank you for watching.